Hello and welcome back. So, picture this. You've just spent millions of dollars on a sprawling 512-acre ranch in the middle of nowhere. It's not because you have a sudden desire to become a cattle baron or live a quiet, rustic life. No, you bought this specific piece of land for a very different and much stranger reason. You bought it because it's widely considered to be the most paranormally active place on Earth. A veritable Disneyland for things that go bump in the night. This isn't some hypothetical scenario. This was the reality for a man named Robert Bigelow. In 1996, the story of the Sherman family and their terrifying experiences on a Utah ranch had just broken in the local papers. They'd seen it all. Massive wolf-like creatures that were impervious to bullets, strange lights in the sky that zipped around with impossible speed, disembodied voices and poltergeist activity that made their home feel like a funhouse designed by a demon. The family was at their breaking point, desperate to escape. And that's when Robert Bigelow, a Las Vegas real estate billionaire with a lifelong fascination with the UFO phenomenon and the afterlife, stepped in. Bigelow didn't just buy the property, which would soon be known to the world as Skinwalker Ranch. He bought it with a very specific and frankly audacious goal in mind. He wanted to capture definitive scientific proof of the paranormal. This wasn't going to be a weekend ghost hunt with some flashlights and a Ouija board. Bigelow was a serious man with serious resources, and he planned to throw the full weight of modern science at whatever was lurking in the Uinta Basin. To do this, he founded an organization with a name that sounded like it was pulled straight from a sci-fi novel, the National Institute for Discovery Science, or NIDS. And the team he assembled was nothing short of a scientific dream team. We're talking about physicists with PhDs, engineers, biochemists, and veterinarians, many of whom had backgrounds working for the government and military. These were not excitable amateurs. They were stone-cold professionals, trained to be skeptical, to observe, to measure, and to analyze data. Their mission was to move into the ranch, set up a state-of-the-art surveillance and research operation, and document whatever happened. They were going to get to the bottom of the Skinwalker Ranch mystery, once and for all. The NIDS team descended on the ranch like a scientific army. They fortified the property, installing a perimeter of cameras, motion detectors, and infrared sensors. They built a command center in one of the old ranch houses, packed to the gills with monitoring equipment. They had magnetometers to detect magnetic field fluctuations, Geiger counters for radiation, and spectrum analyzers to listen in on a wide range of radio frequencies. They were ready for anything, or so they thought. It was almost as if the ranch itself knew it was being watched. The phenomenon, which the team began referring to as the precognitive intelligence, seemed to react to their presence. It was playful, but in a malicious, taunting way. For example, the scientists would decide to focus their attention on a specific part of the ranch, say the Western Ridge. They'd set up cameras and sensors, get everything perfectly calibrated, and then sit back and wait. And for hours, nothing would happen. It would be dead quiet. But then, just as they were about to pack it in for the night, all hell would break loose on the opposite side of the ranch, in a spot they had just decided not to monitor. It happened so often that it became a running joke, albeit a deeply unsettling one. The phenomenon was always one step ahead. The classic high strangeness didn't stop either. Team members reported seeing those same bright, silent orbs of light that the Sherman family had described. These weren't just distant lights in the sky. They would fly low over the mesas, hover directly above the observers, and sometimes even seem to emerge from or disappear into the ground itself. One of the most famous incidents involved a NIDS investigator and a local rancher. They were out in a pasture one evening when they saw a brilliant stationary light hovering in the sky. As they watched, a smaller, darker, triangular object emerged from the larger light, did a quick, silent loop around the pasture, and then redocked with the parent craft, which then shot off into the sky at an impossible speed. Then there were the animal mutilations. This is a topic that often gets lumped in with UFO lore, but at Skinwalker Ranch, the NIDS team got to study it up close. They would find their own cattle dead under the most bizarre circumstances. There would be no tracks leading to or from the carcass, not even their own. The animals would have strange, surgically precise incisions on their bodies, Organs like the eyes, tongue, or rectum would be removed with what was described as a hot scooping instrument, cauterizing the wound as it cut, and most disturbingly, there would be a complete and total lack of blood, either in the body or on the ground around it. The team's veterinarian was completely baffled. These were not the work of any known predator. The psychological toll on the team was immense. The phenomenon wasn't just external, it seemed to be able to get inside their heads. Researchers reported experiencing intense feelings of dread and terror out of nowhere. Some experienced vivid, shared hallucinations. In one instance, several team members simultaneously saw a large humanoid figure, watching them from a ridge, only for it to vanish into thin air. Perhaps most frighteningly, the activity wasn't always content to stay on the ranch. This is what the researchers called the hitchhiker effect. Team members would leave the ranch to go home for a weekend, thinking they were getting a break from the madness, only to find that something had followed them. Their homes would suddenly be plagued by poltergeist activity. Objects would fly off shelves, doors would slam open and shut, and shadowy figures would be seen darting down hallways. The families of the researchers, people who had never even set foot on the ranch, were being terrorized. Imagine trying to explain to your spouse that the reason your television just turned on by itself and started cycling through channels at maximum volume is because you've brought a hitchhiker home from your paranormal research job. It was a terrifying violation, and it led to several researchers quitting the project. They simply couldn't risk their family's safety. After 7 years of intense round-the-clock investigation, Robert Bigelow and the NIDS team had gathered a mountain of data, but they were no closer to a definitive answer. In fact, they probably had more questions than when they started. They had documented hundreds of anomalous events, but they couldn't nail down what it was. Was it extraterrestrial, interdimensional? Was it some kind of super-advanced terrestrial technology? Or was it something else entirely, something ancient and supernatural that defied all scientific explanation? In 2004, Bigelow decided to sell the ranch. The constant cat-and-mouse game with the phenomenon, combined with the psychological strain on his team, had become too much. But his involvement in the mystery was far from over. Unbeknownst to the public at the time, Bigelow's work had attracted the attention of some very powerful people. In 2007, he was approached by officials from the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA. They had heard about the NIDS research, and they were intrigued. This led to the creation of a secret, Pentagon-funded program called the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program, or AAWSAP. Its purpose was to study UFOs, or as the government now calls them, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, UAP. And where did they decide was the best place in the world to conduct this research? You guessed it, Skinwalker Ranch. Bigelow's new company, Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, or BASS, was awarded a $22 million contract to continue the investigation he had started a decade earlier. So, once again, the ranch became a hotbed of scientific activity, but this time it was being funded by the United States government. The details of what the AWSAP program discovered are still largely classified, but some information has trickled out. They confirmed and documented all the same types of phenomena the NIDS team had. The strange lights, the equipment malfunctions, the psychological effects, and the hitchhiker phenomenon. They wrote lengthy, highly technical reports on topics that sound like chapter titles from a science fiction anthology: warp drive, dark energy, and the manipulation of extra dimensions, and traversable wormholes, stargates, and negative energy. They weren't just dealing with nuts and bolts alien spacecraft. They were potentially dealing with beings that could manipulate space-time, travel between dimensions, and even influence human consciousness. The implications were staggering. In 2016, Robert Bigelow sold the ranch once more, this time to a real estate mogul named Brandon Fugel, who has continued the investigation with his own team, which is featured on the popular television show The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. Fugel has been much more public with his findings, allowing cameras to document the ongoing strangeness, and so the quest for truth at this bizarre patch of land in Utah continues. From a terrified family to a billionaire enthusiast to the United States Pentagon, Skinwalker Ranch has captivated and terrified everyone who has tried to unravel its secrets. It stands as a profound and unsettling challenge to our understanding of reality. It forces us to ask questions we might not be comfortable answering. Are we alone? What are the true limits of science? And what powerful unknown forces share this world with us? The story of Skinwalker Ranch is far from over. With each new team and each new piece of technology, we get a slightly clearer picture, but the central mystery remains. The ranch holds its secrets close, offering just enough tantalizing clues to keep us looking, but never enough to give us the final answer. So now I have to ask you guys, what do you believe is really going on at Skinwalker Ranch? Is it aliens, interdimensional beings, a government conspiracy, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories down in the comments, because this is one of those stories where everyone has a different idea, and honestly, any one of them could be true. That is going to do it for today. But if you enjoyed this story, be sure to check out our channel right here.